Hello and welcome to Introduction to SBOM, using software bills of materials for AppSec and compliance. This is a lean AppSec production. My name is Darren Meyer. I'm going to be guiding you through this course. We're going to teach you a little bit about what SBOMs are and the various considerations that you have for meeting the requirements and other ways that you can use them in your software security programs to manage risk posed by third-party components. So let's get right into it. Why are we here in the first place? It turns out that being able to manage supply chain risk and being able to manage vulnerabilities in third-party components is a huge security consideration. So much so that people who are in charge of national security, not only for the US, but for other governments around the world, see it as a pretty significant priority for national security. In the US, CISA and DHS have explicit requirements that you be able to produce and manage a software bill of materials for everything that you use. This has rolled out in the form of an executive order, but also in a NIST standard for the Secure Software Development Framework, requires the production and management of SBOMs. And that has led to compliance topics, right? If you want to do business with the federal government, you're probably going to have to comply with FedRAMP, very few exceptions. FedRAMP requires that you have a vulnerability management program. As part of that vulnerability management program, you need to be able to prove that you have an accurate inventory. And the way that you prove that you have an accurate inventory of all of the third-party and open source components that you have is by providing SBOMs to the federal government. So you will need to produce and send them SBOMs. If you are using somebody else's software in something that is FedRAMP certified, you will also need to be able to produce the SBOM for that, even though you didn't write it, which means you're going to need to be able to consume SBOMs from your vendors as well. The FDA has also an explicit SBOM requirement that you provide a complete bill of materials for everything that goes into a medical device. And as we know, software itself can be a medical device, and most medical devices these days, unless they're very simple, if they're electronic, they probably have software in them. So you are going to have a software bill of materials for the software components of any kind of medical device that's in scope for the FDA. They actually also require that you disclose the vulnerabilities that you know about in the open source components inside those things. So you're going to need to be able to disclose any known vulnerabilities and have a conversation with them about why are they not fixed? Why are you not addressing or patching these vulnerabilities? You might have a very good reason, but they're definitely going to want to have that conversation with you as part of the certification and maintenance processes. From a commercial standpoint, a little less government, you have the new PCI DSS 4.0, or at least it's new at the time of this recording. They don't explicitly require an SBOM, but those requirements for an accurate software inventory are proved by providing an SBOM. So if you provide an SBOM to the auditors that's complete and accurate, then they will see that you have, that's a way to represent your inventory to them is, here's my bill of materials. I can't produce a bill of materials if I don't have an accurate inventory, and auditors will accept that. We're starting to see other standards bodies also have conversations about whether they want to require SBOMs, what the value of it is for their particular scope of consideration. So we expect that over the next few years, we'll start to see more regulatory and contractual compliance frameworks adopt the idea that you need to be able to produce and or consume SBOMs in order to have safe software, in order to be compliant. I said safe software and compliant in one breath, and we all know those aren't quite the same thing, even though the goal of compliance is to help people make safer software. Compliance doesn't mean you're safe. And so the security industry as a whole is starting to have meaningful conversations about SBOMs as part of best practice. First place we're seeing this is in third-party risk programs. So if I'm trying to purchase software, I want to know what's in it. I want to know what vulnerabilities are there. I'm going to ask my vendors for an SBOM. As far as I know, no one is really requiring this yet, unless they have specific compliance requirements that force them to do this. But more and more organizations, especially those with very mature third-party risk programs, are starting to score their prospective suppliers based on, can you provide us with an SBOM? And a big part of that is being able to respond to these supply chain related incidents, right? When you have a thing like Log4j, or when you have a thing where there's a vulnerability and you need to be able to tell your customers whether they're affected by it, and you internally need to know what components do I need to go examine, and what has that library at the base level. First question I need to ask is, who has this thing? So Log4j came up. First thing you needed to answer for your organization was, what software do I have that has the vulnerable version of Log4j in it. If I don't have it, I'm definitely not affected. If I do have it, I need to do some more research. I might need to ask vendors, need to perform testing to figure out if it's actually vulnerable. But I wanted to narrow it down very quickly when I did the incident response for this. Where do I have this? Where do I put my effort? Where do I look? And having a software bill of materials really speeds and reduces the cost of that kind of incident response. Since we're seeing supply chain incidents increase, they're not going away, they're not going to go down anytime soon, this is becoming a very important capability to have and manage SBOMs. And that means people are going to ask you to produce them too. If you produce a product that people consume, you are at some point going to be asked for an SBOM from one of your customers. Right? It's going to happen. It's an emerging capability at this point. And just in general, it's trying to solve this software and service inventory problem. It's become more difficult as people have more rapidly adapted open source, as products have moved toward a cloud provisioning model where my application isn't necessarily consuming components that I run myself. It's a service somewhere on someone else's cloud in many cases. And I have even less visibility than something I run myself in terms of what's it made of? What ingredients are in this thing? How do I know if there's a supply chain incident, whether I'm affected by this service? All of those questions. What do I have? Where is it operating? Has become a harder and harder question. And there's a lot of effort being spent on how do I make sure that I have an accurate inventory of not only software I build, software I consume and run and operate, and software I consume as a service through some kind of modern cloud provision. Being able to get a hold of that is a big topic. SBOMs are a piece of how you get on top of what components do I have and how might I be affected. So as we move on to the next video, we'll be talking about what an SBOM is. You'd think it'd be obvious, but it's a little less obvious than you might think. There's a lot of misunderstandings and emerging consciousness in the marketplace. So we'll learn a little bit about what it is and why you'd want to use it. So I hope you get a chance to tune in to the next video and enjoy.